Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of The People's Choice here on WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Network. We're so thrilled and so privileged this evening to have with us one of the most special guests that we could think of here in more recent time, a true powerhouse in her own right, and one that has given an opportunity for so many and serves on a regular basis in her community. Not only do we have that special guest, but then we have my right-hand woman, the one who will fight my battles if I can't do it for me, the one who is a voice to be reckoned with on a regular basis in the city of South Fulton. Ladies and gentlemen, again, we are live on The People's Choice on WCEGTalkRadio.com, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on LinkedIn, and in all of those areas, you can like us as well. So without further ado, I want to bring to your attention my co-host, the true watchdog of the city of South Fulton. Ladies and gentlemen, you know her all too well, Miss Damita Chatman. Hey, Damita, how are you this evening?
Thank you, Joe. How are you doing? Thank you. Glad to be on your show today.
So glad to see you. So glad to see you. Listen, in addition to that, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us one of a true powerhouse, a true voice from the Georgia Legislative Assembly, who is currently a candidate for the 5th Congressional District of Georgia. We have none other than, and I hate to even use the word former, but I'll say that for the sake of it, former state representative of the 74th District, our friend, candidate Valencia Stovall. Good evening.
Hello, Joe and Damita. Thank you for this opportunity, and to the WCEG family. Hello.
Well, it's so wonderful to have you both. It's so good to see you. I know that you have been hot on the campaign trail, and I can only imagine what your schedule is like, so I don't envy you, but I do wish you all the best. And whatever we can do, we'll definitely do to make sure that you get to where you need to be. So I'm going to just open the floor up here because I know if I know anything, I know that Damita already got a host of questions and concerns. So I'm actually going to open the floor on Damita and allow her to come in first. But real quickly, before we do that, let's get a brief introduction, Valencia, of yourself. Our listeners may know you, but there may be some new ones to join us who may not know. So tell us a little bit about who you are and where you are currently in life as far as, what you're striving to do. And then we'll get right into the questions.
All right. Thank you again. I'm Valencia Stovall. I am a mother of two. I'm a native of the city of Atlanta. And I also have just noticed that from all the years of being a legislator and serving the people, I noticed in Congress, after I left serving the people, in Congress, there's a deficit in leadership. And because there's a deficit in leadership, we need someone that's going to be bold, who's going to be accessible and committed to the people and solution driven. Right. And that's why I decided to offer myself as a candidate, a Democratic candidate for Congressional District 5. And my platform is simple. It's the buck, the book, and the ballot. The buck, the book, and the ballot. And I first heard those phrases from Honorable Mayor Maynard Jackson, who was the mayor of the city of Atlanta. Yeah. And my dad served as his community liaison for many years during his both terms of office. And so I got a chance to, to really be around and see a lot of great things that he did. And the buck is dealing with economic rejuvenation. And the book is education reimagining, how we're going to do our education system. And the ballot is voter education. And I bring to the table, I call it 8-30-30. 8 years as a legislator, where I sponsored and co-sponsored over a dozen bills that were actually signed into law. 30 years as a small business owner and 30 years as a community advocate.
Well, listen, all of that just drives and pulls you even further into the arena as a true public servant. I dare not call you a politician, but that you are a true public servant and you come from a servant leader. And that in itself is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So without question, again, we thank you and are so great to have you here. And I'm going to yield for just a little minute because I know how she could get riled up. I'm going to yield just a minute to Damita and allow her to come in right out the gate. Come on, Damita, tell us what you got.
Yeah, Miss Valencia, let me ask you a question because I know you're running for District 5 Congress seat. That was the Congress John Lewis, correct?
That's correct.
Let's talk about that bill that you signed with during your days under the Gold Dome, that charter bill, because you know how that's probably going to come up. So I want you to explain, why did you go with the Republicans with that charter bill, and what was your thinking process?
Okay. And I'm glad you asked that question, because that's one area when it comes to education that was my focus, heavy focus as a legislator, along with other issues. And the reason that I feel so strong in this about school choice, and it's all about the children. It has nothing to do with the adults. It's all about the children. And it's about ensuring that every child has access to the best education in whatever setting their parents decide that they want them to be in. And I think when we get into the debate about whether it's charter, which is a public school, and it's non-traditional public school, or whether we go to traditional school, which I don't have an argument either way against public, traditional, non-traditional, private. At the end of the day, that child is going to turn 18. And when they turn 18 and they don't have a good foundation in education, we all suffer. And one of the things I notice each year as a legislator, our budget for corrections, Department of Corrections, continue to rise. It started at $1 billion, and it was always going up. Mm-hmm. And it told me that there's a lot of things that are going on with our young people. And even with the argument or I would say the strong discussion about whether charters or whether it's other options of school choice are viable, when we even think about the Georgia pre-K program, those are state dollars and some federal dollars that are used. There's never an argument about where those monies go. They even go to private organizations, private daycare centers or early learning centers, and public. When we look at the trajectory of our young people, once they age out and they go to college, the Pell Grant, that is federal money, taxpayers' money that we let 18-year-olds be able to decide how they want to spend it. And many of them end up deciding in private institutes, just like our HBCUs we have here in Atlanta. And it's only when we talk about K through 12 where there seems like there's so much discussion, but to me, it still ends down to student learning. And I believe that the reason that charter schools were initially created were because they served as an incubator for our traditional schools. And sometimes some of the traditional schools, we gave them waivers. There was one of the bills I did sign on to allow them the same flexibility that the charter schools had. And it was up to the school district to utilize it. But what happens is that in those settings, those charter schools have to sign an agreement, and it's called a charter petition. They tell you how many students going to be allowed. And the reason there's a limit on the number of students is because that's how the funding flows. And charter schools do not receive the same level of funding as our traditional schools. They never have. And because of that, they're able to be more creative, they be more innovative. And the hope was that the success of those particular charters would then spill over to our traditional schools, that they can be able to allow the same opportunities that the students that are in charter schools have. And one other thing I did want to mention as well, before I end that part of the conversation, is that most recently the AJC had an article it was a couple of days ago that they posted that Bloomberg Foundation is now merging with or collaborating with United Negro College Fund, where they're going to set aside money for HBCUs to be able to start charter schools as well, because that's another opportunity using the system to be able to educate, give a proper education or better education, or provide for a better opportunity than what some of our students are actually having now.
In keeping with the subject of bills, that you were a part of, or author or co-author, I want to go back to one you did back in April. As a matter of fact, it was introduced on my birthday back in 2019. So how about that? The bill, I think it was HBC 736. That was loan forgiveness program. Do you remember that one off the top for teachers? Now, I understand that at least to my knowledge, it did not pass. The bill died. Is that correct?
No, actually, they put, I think they put that portion of that bill into another bill. So what happens a lot of times, you can start off authoring or co-sponsoring a bill,
right,
and it might not make it to crossover.
Right.
And so when it doesn't make it to crossover, then what the author usually does is find another title, a title code in that they can now attach that bill to, that it'll end up passing along with another bill that did make it through crossover.
Right. So I'm glad Damita brought up, your legislative work, because, quite often in interviews, we don't always get an opportunity to dive deeper into the things that you have worked on. And so people will only know most candidates. Fortunate for you, you have had the experience and you've worked down at the Gold Dome and you've passed legislation that has had great effect on our communities and in our
You muted out. I don't know. Can you hear him, Damita?
No, I can't hear him. Look like he muted out.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, can you?
Is it back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with Xfinity, so we do apologize for those of you that are tuned in. But I thank Damita for bringing up the legislative part of your role. But as we continue, I'm sure Damita has other questions. I'll definitely yield back to her. So where do you find now, in your time, in your tenure as a state representative for Georgia, what do you find that you had the hardest or where was the most difficult piece of legislation that you had to either agree with or disagree with? And I'm asking this question so that our listeners can understand that there may be some things that may not, counter to the point of Damita's opening statement about that bill, there may be some things that you may not completely agree with, but because on the other side, there are some good that comes out of it, you still have to vote with a party that you may not agree with. So is there or was there something that was extremely hard and difficult for you to completely agree with, but there were some things in there that made the difference for you to decide yay on that bill?
Yes. So at the Georgia State Capitol, there are always majority of the time they're usually our controversial bill because there are different viewpoints on both sides of the aisle. And one of the things that I can say I've done successfully was being able to work across the aisle. Right. And as a result, being able to bring $45 million back to Clayton County because of a loss that happened with the Federal Aviation Administration. And they had nothing to do with me taking less about my morals or voting, sneaking behind the doors. And some people, thought I was doing everything I did was always up front. I always let my colleagues, co-legislators know what my vote was going to be. And the reason why I voted, it kind of goes back to even with the whole school choice issue that has always been probably one of those hardest fights I've had with my colleagues on the Democratic side, not all of them, but a lot of them. Right. And for me, it was because I looked at who my constituents were and who sent me down to the state capitol. Right. And I knew that there were challenges that those parents were having. And there were areas where our traditional school were not doing what I felt that they could have been doing or should have been doing for those particular parents. And I felt that instead of sitting back and at the same time working with the traditional schools, which I helped co-sponsor a couple of bills, even to help start a foundation so our traditional schools can be able to, they can raise money and be able to apply for grants as well. Right. So it was never either this or that. It was always, hey, we can do this and that and that, so that all the kids can be able to be serviced. But if that parent felt so strongly, and I was that parent one time, that had a son that had a disability, and I didn't feel that that school that he was at was actually servicing him like they should. And I had the ability to be, okay, I'm gonna transfer him here. And a lot of times you have to move into the district. So there's so many obstacles that parents have to face when it comes down just trying to educate and get their child better, because they can't afford to move to the more affluent areas. So they kind of like, you're stuck where you are, but you should also have options. So school choice was one of those areas where my party, majority of the party was always against it. But did we ever have a sit down dialogue about it? Never. The 8 years I was down there, we never had a sit down dialogue. It was, you voted with the Republicans. And the funny part about that whole thing about voting with the Republicans is if you look back at even the voting record, majority of a lot of the times Democrats are voting with Republicans on those bills, on a lot of those bills. Right. There's gonna be times when you're gonna vote no, but there are other bills that you're gonna see a yes vote on all the way down, down the road. You might have a few no in between there. Right. So to just kind of isolate those particular incidents, I think you need to look. Everybody should look at the whole total picture. And then there were times even with the budget that there were some things in there that should have been in that wasn't in, but I had to look at it. What else was in there that if that budget did not pass, who else was going to be affected from that? The billion dollar budgets, 20-something $billion budgets that we were passing.
Right. That last part, if nothing else, kind of speaks to the work that a legislator has to do. You have to look at the total picture. And unfortunately, you know this, you've served down there, our country and all of our elected leaders, are sometimes holding back much needed funding, much needed education, much needed food, whatever it is that the money in the coffers or in the government affords our people to have, are sometimes being held because people are sitting on something because it's not what their party introduced and it's not what the other introduced, which kind of leads me into the segue of where you are. Now, you are now currently running as a Democratic candidate, but prior to this, you were an independent candidate and an independent legislator here in the state of Georgia. And I'm sure Damita wants to get in on this. I almost felt like Damita just already had this in her mind, but I just want to talk a little about that. Damita, do you have a question?
Look, you stole it right out of my mouth. So go.
Well,
I know that was going to be one of the hot questions. You just stole it out of my mouth, Joe.
Well, but because there will be people, and you know this, Representative Stovall, who will make comments like, oh, you left the party and now you're back with the party. And, people will go back and forth because you don't, and we say this in church, folk get mad at you because you don't sin like they do. Not because, that they are free of it, but because you don't sin like they do. And people will get mad at you because you don't vote like they do down at the Gold Dome. You don't agree with everything they're doing. And so for a while there, you removed yourself from the Democratic Party and registered as an independent. Tell us about that transition and how much, if any, true opposition that you got from it, and how much support did you gain from it?
Okay, and I appreciate the question. One thing about it, my 8 years serving as a legislator was you learn how to have thick skin. And every time I voted, for something, one thing I always did with my constituents, I had a meeting. Anytime I voted a way that I felt that the Democratic Party or somebody was going to be in opposition, I held a town hall and I laid everything out on the table. One of them was the voting bill, the electronic voting bill one time. So, I'm open book. You can ask me and I'm going to give you the answer. So, serving down at the legislature for those 8 years, it was very, very controversial, many times dealing with education. I sat on the education committee. I was also a vice chair of the academic support subcommittee. And I was one of a few Democrats that had a leadership role throughout the whole House of Representatives. And so with that, many times I was ostracized by my own party. And it was never, like I said, they never sat down and say, hey, Valencia, we see that each year you really feeling very strongly about school choice. What is it that we're missing? It was always a do or die. You either vote with us or you voting against us. And I didn't look at it like that. Right. And so once I left, and my dad was been a Democrat since the 70s, helped start the Young Democrats of Fulton County. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't an easy decision to make, but I knew that being an independent, that still allowed me to look on both sides of the aisle, like I've always have done. And when I ran for U.S. Senate, I did run as an independent. And I did get a lot of support from those people that was in the same similar position as me as a Democrat that felt that the party was not listening to their concerns and was just too, you got to do like this.
Right.
And you can see some of that happening in Washington, D.C. now with the progressive, with that group and some of the legislation that was trying to be passed. And they said, no, we're not going to vote for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, I made that decision. And then as I served as ended my term still as an independent when I left the office, then started getting a lot of calls, people asking me, Valencia, would you please get back into office? Would you please run again? And they said, would you please run again as a Democrat? And they said, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed in our party, like having, the person who's in the seat now serving dual roles. And even that whole selection process was not fair. And so when you look at things like that, and they said, if you as an independent, you can't help fight be our voice. And for all of us to be able to unite and straighten the party out and make it fair to all people that are running. Even now, there's some unfairness in some of the Democrats that are running against the more popular Democrats that are on the ticket and even on the top of the ticket. And so that's my answer to you about that. And the last thing I'd like to also bring to everybody's attention, when Bernie Sanders, who's an independent, ended up running as a Democratic presidential candidate, as a Democrat, did anybody say anything about that? I didn't hear a whole lot of questioning about him on that.
They were
and he also endorsed some of the people that announced running for office now, and who also endorsed him when he ran for Joe Biden, gained so much traction in South Carolina. So whenever someone brings that up, I say, okay, is it because of who I am, what I look like, because I'm a woman? What is it that you question me like that, but you don't question someone that ran for the whole United States of America's presidential election?
Representative Stovall, there's so much I could say to that in reference to the fact that, to your point, there is a lot of unfair treatment that is taking place within the party. And I know that you can't, really go into, those details and make it known like that. But I have, for a number of years, been very disappointed in what I've seen in the Georgia Democratic Party. And that's just my personal stance. These are not the views of WCEG. These are just simply my views and my views alone. So we now come to this place where we are up to, we're up for the District 5 seat is up, and it is in need to be filled. There's a current person there, but apparently there seems to be a need, a possible need for change in that. And we apparently are looking to you to make some of that change to take place in the 5th district. Damita, you want to get in on it? I know you want to get in on this. So Damita, I'm going to let you.
Yes. Thank you, Joe. I just got a text, but thank you. Let me ask you some, Miss Valencia. I know you're going to be running for District 5. Tell me, what can you bring to that district that Congress John Lewis did? And I'm going to say this, going from Fairburn, if you know the area, you from here from Fairburn, all the way down to that Atlanta, it's just horrible. All the Martin Luther King streets are horrible. What can you bring to that district that nobody else had bought?
Okay. Well, first, it was redistricted, so it doesn't take in that Fairburn area anymore. It actually, of course, still takes in all of Atlanta, a portion of Forest Park and Conley, and a portion of College Park in Forest Park, in Clayton, and College Park in Fulton County over near Camp Creek Parkway. And then north is portions of Sandy Springs. And then going east, it is North Decatur, the Emory area, portions of downtown Decatur, Avondale area, and then Southwest DeKalb. So the district has changed, and really I look at it as a very, very diverse district. You have those that are affluent, those that are middle, and those who need a lot of support and help. And so, and because you have to have someone that's able to have the heart to want to serve everybody, and knowing that there are different conversations that you're going to have, throughout Congressional District 5. And most importantly, what I have seen and noticed, even being a state representative, there's not a lot of communication and information that flows freely from the federal government down to the state and down to the local. And knowing that on the local level, like she was talking about some of those streets on MLK and some other areas where they're desolate and need a lot of support, or you see one part looks good, and then you go down a couple of blocks, it looks bad, then it goes back to looking good in those areas. Of course, those decisions are made by the local officials, but they must have support and be in collaboration with the federal and state officials as well. And so bringing to the table is my experience with having the desire to be able to have an advisory council that's set up to be able to be on a regular quarterly basis, being able to making sure that we're in contact with those local officials, knowing what they need. Same thing with in my district, was knowing, I would tell them all the time when I would attend city council meetings and all of the county meetings, you have to tell me what your needs are so I can tell you what's available on the state level. And now mimicking the same thing, because it's no different as being a state representative than on a U.S. representative. The structure is similar. Of course, you have a broader ability and things that are open to you to be able to use, but using the same ideas of, hey, you let me know what it is that you need. I'm letting you know what's happening on the federal level. And then there are a lot of departments that are underutilized. We talked about education before. I can tell you one idea that I have that kind of touches a lot of areas in education. So right now we have the AmeriCorps program, which is a volunteer program that's set up by the federal government. And they pay stipends to college students. And then they also have money set aside to pay them to go towards their student loan debt. Or if they don't have a student loan debt, it goes towards them for in the future, a higher education that they want to be able to participate in. Well, I participated in it, but not as a college student, but I was a part of America's Promise, and where I worked in the elementary school, actually the elementary school I attended. And so my idea is to take that concept and open it up to not just college students, but other individuals who want to be able to earn a stipend, and also being able to look at how they cut down their student debt, but then helping our schools. And this will have whether it's public, traditional public, non-traditional public, it doesn't matter. But them being able to help support the teachers in those classrooms, those tutors that are needed, those after school activities and other events that are needed. So really putting them to work. And who knows, some of those young people who never had thought about going into education could now say, hey, I never thought about it, because a lot of times our young people, unless they're exposed, they don't know that certain types of careers exist. And so being able to utilize that, and then you bring in your nonprofits who are used to handling volunteers, a whole lot of volunteers, because our school system, there's too much burden to put on them for them to manage. But they can be able to collaborate with the nonprofits and bring the resources to the nonprofits to be able to operate this particular program. So that's just one idea beyond, like I said, being able to form those advisory councils to be able to make sure the information is flowing freely back and forth and being committed and accessible.
That tells it all. So here's a question. And I don't know that you can really answer this question, but I'm going to ask anyway. What's going on with this double dipping with our current leader in this district? How is this even being possible? How is this possible? How is this even happening?
Well, one question I would throw it back to those who are members of the Democratic Party of the state of Georgia is asking, how have they allowed this to happen? And when you're serving in two roles, it's impossible for you to make sure that you're able to serve each individual, each constituency base like you should. And I call it, you can't serve two masters.
Right.
And,
it's a problem.
It's a problem. And even though some people may say it's not illegal, there's a certain point where you come into where things might not be legal, but ethically, is it the right thing to do?
Right.
And what happens is when someone's in that kind of position of power, that everything else up under there, you have people intimidated that if they don't support the person that's in the office that has the control over the money, has control over everything as being the chair, then that makes everybody uncomfortable. And then it doesn't make it fair. And when people look at, I'll give you another example. On the website, I don't know if they changed it now, but on the website, when you first clicked on the Democratic Party of Georgia website, you had Warnock's picture, Senator Warnock's picture was on there with John Lewis. Well, he has a Democratic opponent. And then when you scroll all the way down to the end of the page, there's the chip in button with my opponent's face on there, her son, and John Lewis. So that's a subliminal message that you're sending. Click here. I'm the person that the party is supporting. Now, you don't see any other elected officials on any other part of that front page. So why not either don't have none of the elected officials on there or have all of them? Why aren't all the Democratic Party candidates listed on the Democratic Party website? So there are a lot of things that needs to be straightened up with when it comes down to leadership. But that starts with people stop standing on the sideline complaining about it and not putting forth the effort to do something about it. Even the whole selection of the nominee was not fair. Clayton County got left off of the request or the ability to be able to have anything to say. And part of that district, that time it took up a large part of Clayton County. So there's a lot of unfairness that's going on, and the Democratic Party members, and this starts with leadership across the state, have to speak up and stop going along to get along.
See, that, for me, Representative Stovall, that's the thing that really, and I'm just going to say, it just pisses me off about the DPG here in Georgia. And I'm often asked, am I a silent Republican? And I'm not. But I am absolutely sick and tired of, people taking our vote for granted and just assuming because you're an African American or because you grew up in the city of Atlanta or because you're in Atlanta in the district that you're going to vote for them. And people have to take a closer look at what's happening within the leadership, as you mentioned. So, I'll just say, I really hope that when you are elected, you have the opportunity to create the effective change that's needed within the party here in the state of Georgia. Damita, go ahead.
Oh, well, look, she didn't kind of she kind of put me in a predicament there because I am part of the state committee of that process. And did I go believe in that process? It was things that had me question. But right now, I believe that the Democrat Party, if we don't get it together, we're going to lose the 22 election. It's no ifs, ands about it. Because right now, it's so much infighting. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to be on that throne. Do you agree with me, Joe?
Oh, I agree 100%. So that's my problem.
So right now, we have numerous of candidates running for one office. That's splitting that black vote. And I've said it once, and I might get in trouble, but I don't care. I've always said, why didn't you get in a room and pick a candidate for each one of those slots and the Democrat Party get behind them? But what I see in the Democrat Party, everybody want to be somebody. And so right now, we're losing seats because, Valencia, they draw those lines out, and I'm quite sure you was affected too, right? Mm-hmm. They draw them lines. So now you got Democrats fighting against each other for a seat. Look at Lucy McBath and the other young lady. Now they're fighting for one seat. I think we should have did something. And Joe, do you agree with me?
I agree wholeheartedly because, to your point, we have the primary elections coming up. And in doing so, it makes it extremely hard to allow wonderful candidates or people who could actually make the effective change to take place to rise to the top. Because kind of to your point, there are so many people running in one particular race, and it kind of it splits the vote. And every time we split the vote, then it becomes down to, and it's unfortunate, but in the metro Atlanta area, it comes down to who went to school with who
Yeah.
who mama worked for whose daddy was in this, and so on and so forth. And that really ticks me off about the politics that takes place in the metro area, specifically in Atlanta. Atlanta politics is probably one of the most corrupt areas that I can think of. And that's only, in my opinion, this is because people are more concerned about who worked with who, as opposed to who can make the effective change.
Absolutely.
Things that will take place in our community. And it makes me so mad with the city of Atlanta, and especially even in District 5. And I have the greatest respect for Representative John Lewis. But to the question that Damita asked, you asking what could you do, Valencia, that was not done during that time. And listen, and I know this is an unpopular opinion. If you don't want to talk to me no more, Valencia, I understand, but I often say this to people. I can't tell you what Representative Lewis done the past few years that he was in office before he died. I don't know. And maybe because I was not looking, and this is nothing against his abilities and his leadership, but I don't know. But what I will tell you is that his name continued to allow him to get elected. And that's the problem in Atlanta. And that's the problem with government in around the metro Atlanta, because somebody's name will continue to get them elected. And it is just so unfortunate. I'm going to stop before I get upset with this kind of stuff, because it just bothers me. So I'm excited to see you running. Yes, you're known, but your name is, you're not one of those people, what I'm talking about. You serve, and you actually get out there and do the work. And God knows that I wish you all the best in the upcoming election. Go ahead, Damita. I'm a hush now.
Let me ask you a question, Valencia, and you're probably aware we have a group of folks that's putting money behind candidates out of the state, putting these certain people in office to take control of these elections. And I'm going to ask you, and you can say yes or no. Are you one of those candidates
that's getting money from out the state?
Yes. Let me give you the group. We got a group right now that's called a working party families out of New York that's taking control over these elections. I use our election in the city of South Fulton. They backed our mayor's election. Are you one of the ones that's taking money from one of those groups? That's a yes or
no.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first on the People's Choice on WCEG. For those of you who may have just tuned in, I want to kind of backtrack here. We are talking with candidate Valencia Stovall, who is a former representative from the 74th district here in the great state of Georgia. Representative Stovall has really had her entire life served in the community and supporting people, but about 8 years or 10 years of her life, she served 8 years, she served as a state representative representing the 74th district of Georgia. And so we're so glad to have her here with us today. Representative Stovall, can you tell us about your platform? Tell us about what it is that you're looking forward to being able to accomplish, and tell us why the people in the 5th district should look to you for their next leader in this district.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier about the book and the ballot, and all of the issues, of course, that we are facing falling there. We're looking at those issues with our small businesses, and we know that small businesses in America make up about 60% of the businesses. Mm-hmm. And the importance of the vitality of small business is very important, because they're the ones that usually hire within our community. Correct. And making sure that our constituents or the people in our area are actually gainfully employed. Right. And so being able to create another area for micro small businesses is very key. That would be at the top of my list of things to do. And the reason for those who might not understand the importance of that is that when COVID hit, and you had all the EIDL loans that were given out to small businesses and everything, they had the small business category, and then it's usually like 500 or something employees or less. So what about those micro small business that might only have 10 employees, 5, 20, 30? they were all lumped into one category. And so that means that their chances of really being able to get the support, financial support that they needed was diminished. And like I said, they're the backbones of our community, especially in Congressional District 5. You're now looking at the healthcare issues, and we're now facing long COVID. Many people are now suffering from the effects of long COVID. And we have a short workforce shortage with nurses and doctors. And so being able to see how we can be able to change legislation to allow for APRNs, who are the advanced practice registered nurses, to be able to practice in the field up to the level where they have the education. And that'll help cut out a lot of areas where we have a shortage in doctors that are not, especially in those specialty areas. I talked a little bit about apprenticeship programs earlier, making sure that we are allowing more ability for companies that want to have apprenticeship programs to be able to get in and being able to help do that. And that's working with our technical colleges, who are the experts when it comes down to setting up apprenticeship programs. Justice reform is always an issue. Crime. If you look, and I go back to education again, if you look at the number of students or young people who are committing crimes, most of them are under age 18. And what that tells me is that there's something that's happening in our school district, in our communities, that there's no focus, or they feel like the only result they have is to go into crime. And so that's why I talked about reimagining education. We have to bring a collaborative effort with the educators, the parents, the students, the business, all of them together, similar to what I did with Educate Georgia Summit I did for 3 years when I was a legislator, and talk about what the future of education is going to look like in Georgia. And that has to include not looking at educating our kids the same way we've always educated them. No one's standing up talking and lecturing to them. Their attention span is not that long for that anymore. No. So we have to be able to change the way that we're delivering education. That's in the book, and I kind of went back and forth with the book. And also disabilities. People with disabilities are in need, very much need of services and resources. And that goes back to what I said, some of the departments are underutilized. And a lot of times the information doesn't get down to the people who need it, our veterans, and most important, our senior citizens. They suffered a lot during this whole pandemic, and even still now, we're making sure that they're able to have transportation back and forth to their doctor's appointments, access to food. Even when I think Damita mentioned earlier about MLK, them having a food desert. I was riding on MLK and saw there was such a long distance of miles before I even saw a grocery store. And I'm not talking about Family Dollar or anything. I'm saying a real grocery store. Right. So what that tells me, those people have to drive a long way. So what they're going to do is stop at the Family Dollar, stop at some other mini store that they're not eating healthy. And so we have to look at that, because that contributes into our whole healthcare issue that we're facing here. And lastly, voter education. We can register, but if the people are not coming out to vote, then that's where the issue is. The empathy that we have when it comes to voting, not understanding that policies affect everything we do. When we go outside, before we go outside, in our house, policies affect it. We go outside, policies affect everything that we do. So helping them to understand that they have to hold the elected officials accountable, but they have to know what is it that the responsibilities of those elected officials are, so they'll know how to hold them accountable.
Wow. That, Representative Stovall, I have an opportunity, to interview quite a few candidates or even elected officials. And some people, they're very scripted. And then there are some who you can tell are speaking from their heart. And I believe, and in the time that I've known you and had the time to chat with you, that you speak from your heart concerning these areas. What is it that can be done, or what can the people do at this very moment to help get your message out?
Well, first of all, definitely starting with you all sharing, this video. Mm-hmm. For those who might not know, never have heard me, speak before, and going to visit my website, gostovall.com. They can make donations so we can help get the word out, and also being able to find out more information about me. It's a lot on there about my issues that I've been fighting for. And if they want to volunteer, that's on there as well. That allows them to volunteer as well. And so the main thing is like word of mouth. You know, when our family business, majority of our business came from word of mouth. People say, oh yeah, they do good. Yeah, we want you, yeah, go over there and find them. They're gonna do it. So I'm depending on the people to send out the word of mouth. We don't have that level of funding that Damita had talked about earlier, as far as being able to do some things, but we're doing grassroots and we're making sure that we get the word out about this campaign and the candidacy and what they can expect with me going to Washington, D.C.
Right, right. But Damita, you have anything?
He didn't cover it.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are not aware, the early voting takes place May 2nd through the 23rd, May 2nd through the 23rd of 2022. And the primary election, is Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. Representative Stovall made the comment or the statement concerning voter apathy. Excuse me. And it's, one of the most disheartening things that you can see in the community, especially in communities that you can ride through and see that there's a huge need, in their area, but for whatever reason, the lack thereof or the motivation thereof to get out to vote is little to none. What's even more worrisome is that campaigns, elected officials or campaigns spend almost just as much money to get the vote out as they would to actually run their election, simply because people just don't seem to care. I'm not sure where this is taking us as a nation, in the lack there of voters actually getting, or individuals getting out to actually, use their power to vote. But I can tell you where it is not getting us. It is not getting us the right people that we need to serve in office, because good people or bad people are elected every year by good people who don't vote. And even if you don't vote, you are allowing someone else to speak on your behalf. And I'm not even talking about the one that's elected. I'm talking about the people who are actually voting in your district. They will end up choosing who you have no idea who the person is, and choosing someone that may not even benefit you. It's important to have individuals like Representative Stovall, like Damita Chatman, who has given their time, their attention, and their focus to making sure that the people in their districts, in their areas, in their cities know what's going on. We here at the People's Choice do our very best to make sure that you are enlightened as well, but nothing about what I do, what Damita does, and what Representative Stovall has done and is attempting to continue to do matters if people don't get out to vote. And we can tell the story of Voter Rights Act, and we can tell the story, but apparently it resonates with me. But there's a whole nother generation and a whole group of people who are in the 40 range and a whole group of people who are younger who just don't even care. And so the unfortunate thing is we find that same cycle of and I hate to say it, named election people who will continue to get elected for X amount of years and do absolutely nothing. I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I just wanted to make that statement known because it's so disheartening to have grown up in such a powerful city of Atlanta and the gateway, if you will, to the South, and see the areas that I ride through, tearing up my Cadillac and tearing up my rims on my car, roads are just tore up everywhere. And that is not because the funding has not been there. It's because the people in the community don't speak up, won't get out to vote, won't do what needs to be done to ensure that people like Representative Stovall can make the funds allocated to those areas. It's disheartening and it's very sad. Ladies and gentlemen, we encourage all of you, that's the whole preference for this show is entitled The People's Choice, because the people are who elect and who send our elected officials to the Gold Dome, to your local city municipalities, to the state, and also to the nation. But without your voice, we quite often elect people whose personal experiences and personal pockets are far more important than that of the people in the community. Again, I said I was done talking. I'm going to finish talking. I'm going to give Representative Stovall some more time just to tell us, just this is your stump speech. Tell the people what they need to know. So come May 2nd, if they want to start early voting from May 2nd to May 23rd. But if they want to wait, I'm not a fan of it, but if they want to wait for the primary election on May 24th, they can do so as well. But tell us why Valencia Stovall.
Thank you again. Stovall, a vote for Stovall is a vote for someone that's bold, who's committed, and solution-driven. And many of the issues that are facing us today is going to take that type of leadership. I have the experience, like I said before, that 8-30-30, the experience that be able to hear your voice and then work for solutions and being able to work with everybody, because that is key. Going up to Washington, D.C., that is going to be key. And then listening to what the needs are of the constituent is very, very essential, because you have to know what types of legislation, and even beyond passing the legislation and voting for it, there are other areas when it comes down to the various departments that actually fund a lot of our nonprofits that are doing the work on the ground. And a lot of times they just miss out. Our small businesses miss out a lot of times. And if they don't have that concrete information and that foundation that's needed, even with our young people, the help that's needed with our education system, if it's not there, then we fail everybody. And we're not looking for what a great future that we can have. So I ask you to consider and definitely give me your support for your vote. Give me your prayers for this long journey, but it's a short amount of time that's coming up, like you said, starting May the 2nd. Go to my website, gostovall.com. You can find me on all the social media platforms at Valencia Stovall, and just follow what we're doing and share it. Share the information. And the last thing I have to say, vote Stovall. That's all. The book, and the ballot.
The book, and the ballot. Vote Stovall. Damita, do you have any words that you'd like to leave us?
No, I just wish you well on this journey. I'm gonna tell you, just stay focused, and if you believe in the people, you just go out there and fight.
Those are famous last words. If you believe in the people, get out there and fight. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been joining us here live on WCEG, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Network, on the People's Choice, as we have had the opportunity to chat with former state representative and now candidate for U.S. House of Representatives, Valencia Stovall, who is running for the 5th District in the great state of Georgia. And you may know the 5th District. Everybody knows the 5th District. If they know any other district in the U.S. House of Representatives, the 5th District is known because it was held for a number of years by the late, great, Honorable John Lewis. God rest his soul. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank personally candidate Stovall for Georgia U.S. District 5 for giving us a moment to chat with you today, and how important it is to let us know why your voice needs to be heard in the nation's capital. So we thank you so very much for this opportunity. And we also thank you for the work that you've already done in the past years of serving the people in the great state of Georgia. Of course, specifically the 74th District, but it all serves for our people. So we thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you've given it, but any famous last words before we close out?
Stovall, that's all. Go Stovall.com.
Stovall, that's all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining the People's Choice here on WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. We like you, we love you. We hope you do the same to us. Thank you, Representative Stovall. Thank you, Damita, for joining us as always.
Thank you.
Our house from the city of South Fulton. Till next time, ladies and gentlemen, good night.
Good night.